Boys and girls, I hope you're as excited as I am to find out what happens next. Odysseus has been called to war in Troy. Now, he tried to get out of it by proving that he was crazy. And maybe you were kind of thinking, like me, that Odysseus seems kind of cunning, maybe a little sneaky, maybe really smart to hatch a plan to try to get out of going to war. But it didn't work, did it? He's got to go. All right, this chapter is called The Wooden Horse. Now, this may be a story you're a little familiar with, and it makes up an important part of our tale because this is how it all gets started. All right, let's read. For the next 10 years, it's a long time. For the next 10 years, Odysseus camped with 1,000 Greek warriors outside the walls of Troy. He despaired that the war would never end. The Greeks slew many Trojan leaders in battle, including the prince who had stolen Helen from her Greek husband. But Helen herself remained captive within the thick walls of Troy. The Greeks had not been able to find a way to enter the city and take her back. One day, Odysseus left the Greek camp and sat alone on the Trojans' shore. He mourned the separation from his wife and felt terribly sad that he had missed seeing his son grow up. He feared that his mother and father might have died while he was at war and that he would never lay eyes on them again. 10 years is a long time to be away from home with no way to communicate, right? They didn't have cell phones, they didn't have mail. So he hasn't heard from home in 10 years. Suddenly, a tall woman appeared before Odysseus. She wore a shining helmet and carried a spear and shield. The woman was Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, and a daughter of Zeus. Athena stared at Odysseus with flashing gray eyes. Though her gaze was fierce, it was also kind. Athena had always been fond of Odysseus. She admired his skills as a carpenter and craftsman, and she loved him for his strength and clever ways. Odysseus was speechless as he stood before the goddess. "I have come to help you take Helen back from the Trojans," she said. "Here is how you shall bring down the walls of Troy. Direct your carpenters to build a giant wooden horse. Hide with a few of your men inside the horse while the rest of the Greeks pretend to leave the island in defeat. Thinking the horse has been abandoned, the Trojans will bring it inside their walls. When night falls and the Greek soldiers return, open the gates of the city and let them in." The goddess then left as quickly as she had come. Odysseus set to work at once. He called for his best carpenter and directed him to build the giant wooden horse. When the horse was finished, Odysseus ordered his men to carve Athena's name into its side. He then chose his bravest warriors and led them up a rope ladder to a secret trap door in the belly of the horse. He and his men locked themselves inside and waited. Soon Odysseus heard the Greek warriors set fire to their camp. He heard them board their ships and sail away in the night. Odysseus dared not sleep as he waited for morning. After many hours, he heard seagulls crying in the dawn light. Then he heard footsteps on the sand and voices. "What is this horse?" a Trojan shouted. "Why did the Greeks build it and then abandon it on our shore?" "It is ours now," said another. "Let us haul it inside our walls." "No, we must not," cried another. "We must never trust gifts from the Greeks. Throw this monstrous thing into the sea." "Burn it!" some yelled. "Let it stay!" others shouted. The argument was interrupted by a Greek soldier who had stayed behind and allowed himself to be captured by the Trojans. Now he claimed to be a traitor to the Greeks. The horse is a gift for Athena, he lied. See her name carved into its side? If you destroy it, the goddess will punish you. But if you give it a place of honor in your city, she will give Troy power over all the world. Now we know that's not true, right? We know the Greeks are sneaking inside. The Trojans argued bitterly about whether or not to trust the captive. Finally, the king made a decision. We will keep the horse, he said. Bring it inside the gates of Troy. Odysseus felt great relief and excitement. Athena's plan was working. He and his men scarcely breathed as the Trojans heaved the giant horse onto rollers, then pushed it into the city. Odysseus waited patiently for night to come. When all was silent, he opened the trapdoor in the horse's belly. It was pitch black outside. The city was eerily calm. All the Trojans had returned to their homes and gone to bed. Under the cover of darkness, Odysseus led the way down the rope ladder. He and his men crept into the city gates, unbolted them, and threw them open. Hordes of Greek warriors were waiting on the other side. In the darkness, they had sailed back to Troy and silently gathered outside the gates. With a horrifying battle cry, let's hear your best battle cry. Nice, terrifying. With a horrifying battle cry, the Greek army rushed into the city. Wah! They killed many men and captured women and children to keep as slaves. They found Helen and returned her to her Greek husband. By dawn, the entire city of Troy was in flames. The triumphant Greek warriors loaded their ships with treasure. Then finally, after 10 long years, they set sail for home. As a strong wind carried Odysseus and his 12 sleek ships away from the shores of Troy, he was jubilant. He imagined all of Ithaca rejoicing over his victorious return. He imagined himself soon embracing his beloved wife and son and his parents. Never had he felt so hopeful and so happy. All right, I have a couple vocab questions for you. So we're going to pause in our reading. I want you to answer the questions, and then you'll go to the next slide and listen to one more chapter. See you over there.